Any sequel has a tall task in front of it, but also an opportunity to refine and build upon everything that worked in the first game. I've found plenty of games that ended up at the same level or fell short, but it's always great to find those special few that take that step forward and make something better than the original. Fuga Melodies of Steel 2 accomplishes that goal in a few ways. Firstly, by offering both greater options in battle but also new challenges, and secondly, by improving the wider strategy of the games, both in choosing how you proceed in the game and during the intermissions when upgrading and interacting with the characters. Story-wise, things are more subjective, but I think it was a worthy follow-up to an underrated gem. Fuga Melodies of Steel 2 is a tactical turn-based RPG developed and published by CyberConnect 2. It is part of the wider Little Tail Bronx series and a sequel to 2021's Fuga Melodies of Steel. Not long after the release of that game, the series was confirmed for a planned sequel and third game, so this is not the end of Fuga Melodies of Steel's arc of the wider series. Fuga Melodies of Steel 2 came out worldwide on May 11, 2023 for PC, Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and the Xbox Series. While it did not garner a lot of attention from traditional critics, those that did play the game enjoyed it, and in particular those who played the first game called the second game an improvement on many of the systems. We do not have any sales figures as of yet, but user reviews have also trended positive, so it is likely that Fuga Melodies of Steel 2 will receive the same positive word of mouth that the first game benefited from. To those curious, Fuga Melodies of Steel 2 is a direct sequel to Fuga Melodies of Steel. While I would not call it essential to have played the first game, the second game's story really doesn't have the same impact if you have not already gone on a journey with these characters before. Plus, you'll have several questions about the world and society that the sequel will not answer for you, although there is a recap for those who wish to press on regardless. It also helps that the first game is available on all the same consoles and platforms as the second game. I do recommend playing the first game if you haven't already, and if you want to know more, you can switch over to my video on the first game, as this video will contain spoilers for the first game. Fuga Melodies of Steel 2 picks up a year after the events of the first game. The kids have gone back to their mostly peaceful lives in spite of the major disruption caused by the loss of the capital city and country being split off into floating islands. Gasco and Berman, though, are at peace, so all should be well, right? Unfortunately, when the kids reunite to examine the Tyrannus at the request of the government, the Tyrannus starts piloting itself and makes off with some of the children inside. Those who remain must board the only vehicle powerful enough to take on the Tyrannus, their old enemy, the Tarrascus. Using the Tarrascus, Malt and those who aren't trapped by the Tyrannus have to chase after and try to rescue all of their friends. Joined by a new friend, Vanilla, the group tries to restore the peace they fought so hard to obtain at the end of the previous game. But at what cost might this next piece come? Like the first game, the second game has multiple endings as well, depending on certain actions over the course of the story. Unlike the first game, the sequel is better at warning you in advance of certain important details to keep in mind in order to get certain endings. These endings especially are part of the appeal of replaying the game because once you have gotten all the endings, plus some other details, you can see the secret movie that teases the third game. Just make sure to get your tissues ready for the Everyone Dies run, which is required this time to get that movie. The developers went dark this time. As for the story itself, I found it effective and opened a few intriguing new elements to the world. Vanilla fits in very well as a character, and I enjoyed how the characters interacted with each other, even if those chances are still more limited than I would like. The world building also has a few more opportunities to show life beyond our main group in the tanks, which gives us a nice look at what our kiddos are fighting for. Plus, the events of the previous game do have a noticeable impact on the narrative and how the story progresses. Good storytelling, although still somewhat shallow given the limited interactions between characters and the small cast of overall named characters. The general structure of the gameplay is definitely similar to the first Melodies of Steel game, but the sequel does add in some wrinkles that change the overall strategy, both while progressing through each chapter and in battle itself. In each chapter, you are given a path to follow, with occasional branches that indicate the difficulty of the upcoming battles. Harder routes are of course more difficult but offer greater rewards, and there will be several choices, so you'll have plenty of risk versus reward decisions to make en route to the final boss of the chapter. There are spaces where you pick up materials, spaces you can heal your tank's health or SP, and the new additions of resolution/empathy spaces and meetup points. These last two involve interacting with either party members or outside friendly people that can gain mult leadership points or offer other bonuses such as discounts for upcoming stores or materials. Then you have the major events on the route that I'll go into further detail on with battles, expeditions, and intermission. The biggest change for the sequel though is the Airship services, which offers you a chance to manipulate the path in front of you. By paying a certain amount of gold, you can place HP and/or SP healing spots on the path, destroy enemies, you do still get experience from those destroyed enemies, or transport yourself back to a certain point on the track. I particularly liked this last one because it allowed me to get additional experience and materials in for a low cost, and this is also where you can get the extra difficult New Game Plus battles if you decide to go for a replay and need the extra challenge while doing so. When it comes to the battles themselves, you have 3 guns on the Tarascus that are flexible depending on which child is assigned to them. The blue ones are machine guns, which are fast and accurate but don't hit that hard. Yellow is the grenade launchers, which are middle of the road in speed, accuracy, and power, which leaves red, the cannons, for slower, harder hitting attacks. Each enemy has a series of weaknesses to the different guns, and by hitting all of them, you can delay an enemy's next move significantly. Beyond that, some enemies also have armor lowering damage dealt that you can shred or ignore depending on abilities. Each individual character has certain skills that cost SP from the shared pool that can heal, reduce armor, give status effects, or unleash more attacks against more enemies. These skills are essential for any tough battle, although there are some items that can replicate their effects if you're low on SP. Each character also has a mood that develops over battle when dealing or taking damage that can put them into hero mode, where they activate special abilities. For example, our newest character, Vanilla's hero mode, allows her to act immediately after taking damage, which I found very useful throughout my playthrough. While the character in front is the main focus of battle, you actually put 2 characters in each gun, where they can support the main gunner. Over time, you build up a link meter between them, which when at full, can unleash a combined powerful strike called a link attack that is stronger the higher the bond the characters have. After defeating the between 1 to 3 waves of enemies, you collect your experience and materials, and continue onwards. Fuga Melodies of Steel 2 gives you more than enough tools to take on any foes. The strategies are numerous and every character has useful abilities and skills. The enemy variety I also think is improved from the first game, with some unique attacks or enemies, such as enemies that can drain your HP to recover theirs, or the new gold and silver enemies that give money or items to sell instead of experience. Granted, those last ones also annoyed the heck out of me when they would just flee instead of staying to be demolished like proper enemies. The bosses are also harder hitting than ever, in part because the game wants you to engage with the new soul cannon and monogarm mechanic. In the first game, at any point you could choose to use a child's soul, losing them forever to power the soul cannon and destroy any enemy in front of you. The Tarascus, though, has a different system. When you take a certain amount of damage, the soul cannon activates on its own and selects a victim among your characters. You then have to either defeat the enemy in time before the soul cannon fires, or use the monogarm instead. I guess you can also just let the soul cannon fire, but what kind of monster are you? The monogarm uses a child's energy to destroy the enemy you are facing, knocking them out until they can rest in the next intermission. You do not get any experience from that battle if you use the monogarm, but it does allow everyone to survive to fight another day. This mechanic added significant tension, and I even got within 5 turns of the soul cannon firing on the final boss, but I am still somewhat mixed on the mechanic. The tension from it activating is significant, but giving us less freedom than in the first game feels counterintuitive. I was still able to complete the game without using either the soul cannon or monogarm, while having to at least acknowledge and change up my playstyle to thwart the cannon's efforts to harm my precious kiddos. So I think the developers accomplished what they were looking for. I'm just not the biggest fan of the system. One of the breaks from the trundling tank tracking the Tyrannus comes in the expeditions, which is essentially a short dungeon exploration. You have 3 characters, although you can only control 1 at a time, and you navigate past traps to collect materials. You can also collect bullets, which can destroy obstacles in your way or enemies that come to face you. Ultimately, in order to complete the expedition, you must find a key to unlock a big chest somewhere in the area. This is a nice short break from the main action of the game while providing useful materials. Fuga 2 also added in some elemental puzzle parts where you can give your bullets certain elemental characteristics to take down specific objects, such as flame bullets to take care of roots holding a wall together. It is a straightforward but fun diversion. The main downtime, though, comes in the intermission periods, which you have at the start, middle, and just before the final boss of each chapter. The middle one might be omitted for shorter chapters. During the intermission, you are given 20 action points to use across a multitude of areas of activity. Having characters talk together and build up their link levels/bonds takes 1 point per chat. Upgrading the guns takes a few points and materials, same with cooking to get certain battle bonuses, planting fruits or vegetables to use for cooking, taking care of the cluckens or moo sheep, resting to help characters recover injuries, fishing for supplies, pacifying the soul cannon with prayers, and you can even do expeditions from the intermission menu. Balancing all of these activities is important to your ongoing efforts to take down your enemies, but it can sometimes be hard to choose what exactly to use your points on. I advise checking the notebook where each child says what they would like to do during the intermission period. If you complete said task, the child's mood improves, meaning they will enter Heroes mode faster in the upcoming battle. Fuga 2 also gives you a reward for completing a certain number of notebook requests with additional experience. Then, you're ready to take on the next challenge. The art of the game evokes warmer tones that give the landscapes and scenes a sense of nostalgia, although the game is not afraid to throw in some bolder colors during particularly emotionally tense moments. The art is mainly static, with animation reserved for major gameplay moments, but they've found plenty of ways to compensate for the lack of movement that get the story across just as well. Plus, the landscapes and character art are just nice to look at. Special shout out though goes for the illustrations at the end of each chapter, which are excellent. Musically, the game has a lot of good tracks that don't quite move over to great, but everything works within the moments they're used and are able to capture the range of moods within the narrative. Voice acting, which is in Japanese or French, is still limited, but fine from what is said. The one big area of improvement in the sequel, though, is in the quality of life features that are here from the beginning, such as the ability to run while moving around in expeditions or intermissions, or the speed up mode on the trail. The game's UI and UX is always very clear about what is going on, with clear and consistent symbol usage and visual language. Fuga Melodies of Steel 2, like its predecessor, does a great job in spite of some budget issues and stands out, at least to me, in a good way. Any people who played and enjoyed the first game will enjoy the second game. Of that, I have no doubt. There are plenty of new additions to tinker with and improvements to the game flow that make this a better experience, in my opinion. The strategy, imaginative setting, lovable characters, and distinct presentation are all there again, and that's all I could have asked for in the sequel. I'm looking forward to the third game and what new things that entry will bring to the table. And in the meantime, I hope to see the first two games continue to gain fans. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to give it a like to stave off the soul-sucking canon the algorithm has trained on the channel. Comments and shares are just as valuable in that endeavor, and if you are not already, please subscribe to help this little positive games-loving corner of the internet continue to grow. Thank you for watching. Have a great day, and happy gaming.